Hello, and welcome to Illustrator, Understanding Vector Graphics and Drawing Tools. My name is Steve Oswald. I'm the Art Director of Marketing here at ASI. In this course, I'm going to start you off slow by going through some of the basics of Illustrator, like Illustrator's graphical user interface and workspace, including creating documents, the tool panel, the menu bar, and the artboard where you craft your artwork. We'll explore the basic elements that make up vector graphics, like paths, strokes, and fills, creating shapes like rectangles and circles, and working with typography. Once we've got those basics taken care of, we'll jump right into the fun stuff like the program's powerful drawing tools. Throughout this course, you'll create a logo and set it up to easily print or send to a supplier or decorator for almost any product. Let's jump right into it. Understanding vector graphics. The main advantage of Adobe Illustrator, and one of the things that differentiates it from its pixel-pushing counterparts, is that it is a vector-based image editing program. Well, you might not know exactly what that means. I'll be walking you through exactly what a vector graphic is and how it can help you develop a more versatile graphic. So think of it like this. In traditional image editing applications like Photoshop, you're limited in terms of the output size or quality, based on the number of pixels or resolution that reside inside the image. This means you must constantly be aware of the DPI settings of your document, because the files are inherently resolution dependent. Now, in some cases, you can't get around this, like photographs, for instance. Photographs cannot be taken in a vector format. They're made of pixels, and they have to stay made of pixels. In Adobe Illustrator, however, we are working with vector artwork. Anything we create inside Illustrator is a vector object. And this type of graphic is resolution independent, meaning it will be just as sharp and clean at 3 inches or at 300 feet. So with Illustrator, you don't have to worry about the resolution of the file at all, because the artwork can be scaled indefinitely without penalty. That's pretty cool. So let's take a look at that. The image here on the left of the page is a raster-based image placed in Illustrator. If I go ahead and zoom in on this image, you'll see how we start to see some fuzziness and some pixels around the edges. I'm using my spacebar right now to get my hand tool to navigate throughout the window. If I go ahead and Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC and zoom back out to fit in window, let's go ahead and zoom in on the vector-based image on the right. As you can see, this image, if I zoom in to 2000+%, it stays sharp. It does not fall apart or we don't see pixels. This artwork is always going to be crisp and clean. This is the raster-based image. I could only use this for an appropriate size based upon the resolution of the image. So if the graphic is created at 5 inches, we're going to want to use it at 5 inches. If we go and blow it up, unlike the vector graphic, it's going to fall apart and start to pixelate. Touring the interface. Another key component to learning any new piece of software is getting familiar with the interface. I'm going to give you a brief overview of Illustrator's interface and teach you exactly where and what everything is. Let's start at the top and work our way down. When you click on these, it opens up a menu. Anytime you see a small black triangle out to the right-hand side, it means there's a submenu located within that particular menu. And you can go and access the tools and commands from inside of that. Anytime you see something grayed out, that means it's not currently able to be performed on the artboard. Mostly because you don't have something selected, or you have something selected that doesn't correspond to the options available. So we have things like the Object menu, the Type menu, Select, Effects, View, Window, and of course, Help. Right below we have something called the Control Panel. It is a contextual object. It changes based on certain things that you're doing or certain objects that you have selected. For example, if I click on the ASI logo, you'll see the changes that were made in the control panel. For example, if I click on a piece of text, we'll see it change and give me options to edit that text. You'll also see these yellow panels available, which are instant access to the panel system that is on the right-hand side. We'll cover that shortly. These panels can be customized per the user. If we look at this little flyout here, these little arrows pointing right, we can click on that and we can switch the menu from a single column to 2 columns. You'll also notice that in several of the tool options, there's this little down arrow right here which tells me, hey, there's more to that tool than showing. If we click and hold, we'll get a flyout menu. If we hold and we drag all the way out, and you'll see the bar here at the end change color, and we let go, we can view those options. Let's do that for a few more. Let's click and hold this, and we'll get some options for the pen tool, and I'll position that where I like. For the text tool, throw that out there. Pen tool, paintbrush, how about for the scaling tool? And maybe this one also, so we have access to those. Finally, on the right hand side, we have probably the most important part of the interface, and that's the panels. The panel system on the right is expanded by clicking these little arrows on the right, as we did over here in the tool panel, to expand that panel. We can click them back to hide it back to icon form. The panel system by default is collapsed into icon form, and you can use them in icon form, or you can have them expanded. They provide access to things like color, swatches, brushes, and symbols, strokes, gradients, transparency, and the very powerful appearance panel. The great thing about these panels is they can be rearranged, opened and closed, docked and redocked in different positions. Let's take a look. If we're interested in the color palette, we can click and hold its tab and drag it out and free float it within the page. If I want to put it back, I simply just drag it and bump it back in. You see it, the blue highlight on the outline telling me it's placing it back into this group. If I want to move it position within that tab, I just drag it straight across and bump it where I'd like. We can go ahead and pull these all out, and we can combine them and make custom palettes. For example, I can pull swatches out from this section, and I pulled stroke out from this section. Maybe I like to work with these together. I can combine them. You'll see that each panel has a panel menu. If I click on this, for the stroke option, I get show options, which gives me additional information for a stroke. If we want to put the panel back into the dock, we simply drag it. You'll notice the blue line which indicates where I'm placing that panel. I'm placing it after this section and above this section. I'll drop it right in there. By default, there are several panels that are not included in Adobe Illustrator's default panels. If we want to add more panels, or we're looking for something that we don't see, we can simply go up to the window menu, and here's our list of panels. If we're not happy with what we've done to our interface, we can simply come up to the Essentials tab, scroll down and click Reset Essentials. You'll notice that puts everything back, panels, and toolbar, the way it was before we started, or the first time we opened up Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to go ahead and pull some panels out and customize it for our workflow. I'll click on this panel menu for stroke, and I'll drop down our options. I'd like to have the transparency and gradient panels out here. My swatches will come in handy. I'm going to add the color to the swatches. I could click on the bottom right hand corner and expand that panel's view if I choose to. And then I will collapse the panels that I'm not currently using, and I'll just move these. Whoops, I'm sorry. Get back in there. And I will just move these out of the way. Creating a document for print. Let's go up to the File menu and click on New on our drop down. We can name our new document My First Logo. Sounds good. And we can use a letter page, and I have a landscape view here. So my width will be 11 and my height will be 8.5. We can choose our unit of measurement, points, picas, inches, millimeters, centimeters, or pixels. I'm going to choose inches, and I'm going to say OK. After you open up a document for the first time in Illustrator, you might be a little confused as to how to navigate around it. And by this, I mean how to look at the file in different ways, or even know how to zoom in and out, or get a little bit more clarity on the composition. Let's walk through various navigational techniques that I use inside of Illustrator, including some keyboard shortcuts that will help you pan and zoom around the document like a pro. The basic navigation controls inside Illustrator can be found inside the Tools panel over here on the left. You'll notice that you have two tools, a hand tool and a zoom tool. The zoom tool is pretty simple. Click on it and click and hold and drag. In Illustrator 2015, they just switched this to what's called the scrubby zoom. So as I zoom out, you'll notice the magnifying glass becomes a plus sign, and as I zoom back, it automatically changes to a minus sign. I can hit Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC, and that fits my document, my artboard, in the window. The hand tool, we can simply choose, click, and you can see how it will move the document within the window. Let me just go ahead and put a shape out on the page. I'll just make a circle and I will fill it black. The hand tool is very important if we're zoomed in on a particular part of the object and we want to navigate around that graphic. So we want to click on our hand tool and we will be able to move through without zooming in and out. You can also perform this function using the space bar on your keyboard. So for example, if I'm currently on my black selection tool, I can hold the space bar down on my keyboard and navigate around this graphic quite easily. You'll notice the crosshairs in the upper left-hand corner, right here. If I click and hold and drag out, I can place the 0 mark at any point on the document. So you'll see I'm going to place it here, so that gives me my 0 mark horizontally and vertically. I'll go ahead and do that again. If I click and hold and drag out and place it in the upper left-hand corner, I'll have my 0 mark for vertical and my 0 mark for horizontal. Let me go ahead and delete our circle. Once we have rulers showing in our document, we can click and pull out guides. If we click and hold within the rulers and drag out, I'm going to drop a guide here at 3 inches. You'll see the guides on the page. Guides do not print. They are simply to help us align things in our artwork. So I'll go ahead and pull a guide out at 3 inches, 4 inches, and 5 inches. And I'll also pull one from the top, maybe let's say down to 4 3/4. And I'm going to do one more, let's say, at 7 3/4. So now that we have our blueprints, we're ready to start building our project. You should take comfort in the fact that you know you've got a solid foundation on which to build your masterpiece here inside of Illustrator. I'm going to go ahead and hold my spacebar tool down and just navigate my window up a little higher. Understanding paths. Throughout this course, you probably heard me refer to the word path every once in a while when I'm talking about artwork that you've seen out here on my artboard. A path is nothing more than a straight line in between 2 points. Let's take a look at that. If I go up here to my tool panel and click on the pen tool, come out on my page and click, and move to the right and click, you'll notice a path. When you think of artwork inside Illustrator, you have to think of paths because all vector artwork that's built inside of Illustrator is made up of a path. And that's not referring to the actual stuff that goes inside the path. This is merely the stuff on the outside, the skeleton of the path, if you will. Paths are nothing more than line segments that make up the overall structure of the artwork that we create. Whereas fills, strokes, effects, and everything else you pile on top of it, that's just like the clothing that goes on the skeleton. I'm going to go ahead and hit return to finish that on my keyboard or enter on a PC. I'm going to get my zoom tool and I'm going to zoom in on this. If I go ahead and select this path with my selection tool, we'll notice it has two anchor points on either end. Anchor points are basically the joints of the skeleton that hold everything together. This little line here in the middle is the path. These two big squares on the end would be the anchor points. Without these 2 points, the path really has nowhere to go. So let me delete that and let's try that again. I'll get my pen tool from my tool panel and I'll click once and I'll move to the right and I'll click again. I will hit return on a Mac and enter on a PC to complete it. If we look at our toggles here for fill and stroke, we'll notice that the path has a fill on it, and I'll fill it none, and it has a black stroke on it. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to go up here and get my selection tool. The selection tool on a path is used to affect the entire path. I can click on it, no matter where I click, it moves it around. The white arrow tool next to our black selection tool is called the direct selection tool. That means if I click on any of these anchor points individually, I can click and manipulate the path. I can click and move that point around. I can go ahead and click this anchor point and extend it and move it around. I'll be able to alter that path by clicking on these two anchor points. Drawing a curved line. Let's go get our pen tool and come out onto our artboard. As I'm drawing this out, watch what happens when instead of just clicking, I click and hold my mouse and start to drag out. If I move over here and click again, as you can see, I'm going up to the right, but my path is actually going down to the left. Let me go ahead and delete. Click and drag up to the right. Let's move over here and click and drag up to the right and hit return to finish. We can go over to our direct selection tool and edit these anchor points. We can click on the anchor point as we did before with the straight line path and move that around. We can also grab one of these handlebars we made and shorten it, drag it, and affect the path that way, any way we choose. So if we want to make a simple curve up, we pull down. If we want to click on this node and pull down, we can affect it that way. Really cool. Let's go ahead and make a closed shape. We'll use a straight line path and a curved path at the same time. I'm going to get my pen tool and I'm going to click at this intersection of the guide we made. I'm going to use my hand tool to navigate slightly through the document. I'm going to come down here and click. I'm going to come to this point, click, hold my shift key, my modifier key down to keep that constrained on a horizontal axis, and let it go. I'm going to come up here, across from here, from this point, and click. I'll use my hand tool to navigate slightly, and I'm going to click and close that shape. I'm going to go ahead and Command Z or Control Z on a PC and undo. You'll notice as I'm closing this path, I get a little white box which says, hey, you're closing that shape. So I'll go ahead and click, and I'll close that shape. I'm going to slightly zoom out here, use my space bar to navigate, and here's our first closed shape. The nice thing about Illustrator is as you're creating a piece of artwork, you don't have the need to nail it the first time. For example, I think this curve I made is a little too sharp. So I'm going to draw a marquee around this point, or I can simply click on it, and I'm going to slide it up. I'm holding my shift key down again, my modifier key, to keep me from getting all wonky and moving around. If I hold my shift key down, you'll notice it snaps it in and keeps it right on that point. I think something like that looks nice. I'm going to go over here to my palettes and choose my swatches, and I'll stroke that, well, let's say red. I can go up to my stroke panel and increase the weight of that stroke by points, 5, 4, 3, 2. Let's leave it at 2. And then again, we can toggle back and forth, which would just change. It would take the color of the stroke, which is red, and fill it, and the color of the fill, which was none, and add a stroke of none. Let's put that back the way it was. If we look over here and we click on this and activate and bring the fill to the front, we can then affect the fill. I'm going to go over to my swatches palette, and I'm going to fill that this nice yellow. All right, let's practice a little more drawing freeform shapes using our pen tool. I'm going to hold my command key down, control on a PC, and just deselect by clicking off. I'm going to go ahead and create this freeform, maybe this cheesy effect here, let's say, just by clicking and dragging. And I'm not going to click and pull a handlebar out here, and I'm not going to click and pull a handlebar out here. And then I'll just maybe make this kind of crust shape, and I'll close it. Again, we see our white box that tells me I'm closing it. And why don't we go ahead and fill that something maybe a little darker? How about something like that? Let's practice that some more. Using our pen tool again, let's go ahead and draw that straight line we worked on earlier. Click, click, return on a Mac, or enter on a PC to finish it. With my fill in front, I'm going to say none. With my stroke in front, out of my swatches palette, let me just go ahead and pull that out so we don't have to keep doing that. I'm going to choose, let's say, this green color, and I can affect the weight here. Maybe make it 4 point. In the stroke palette, we have caps, corners, and where we'd like to align the stroke. In our case, these are grayed out because we don't have a completed shape. We can put rounded corners on it. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you can see that a little better. We have a rounded cap, we have a square cap, and we have a cap that projects past the anchor point. I'm going to go back and put this rounded cap on. How about we make another, it's our pen tool again, we can click and drag out, and we can just make this maybe little shape that could be anything we want. I'm going to go ahead and stroke that none and bring my fill to the front and fill it white. Other shape tools include circles, square, rounded, rectangles, and so on. I'll go ahead and bring that out so we could look at some of this. If we want to make a circle, we just choose our tool, our circle ellipse tool, click on the page, and drag. We can hold our modifier key down, which is our shift key, to constrain that to a perfect circle. I'm going to go ahead and fill that red. Our fill is in front, so I'll be affecting that, and I'll fill it red. Let's go ahead and try that again. There's other ways we can perform this function. We can choose the ellipse tool, come out on the page and click. We'll see the ellipse panel appear. So maybe we'll just say 0.5, tab 0.5, tab 0.5, and say OK. This is a lot larger than I need. So let's go over to our scaling tool. Choose that. Click in the upper left-hand corner. We'll hold our shift key down, which is our modifier key, and we'll drag towards the center. I'm going to go ahead and undo this and show you another option. We can double-click on our scale tool and maybe just give it a percentage. Maybe that was 40%. We can do uniform, we can do non-uniform, which would make it more of an ellipse. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm going to drag and position this in this other circle. And I'm going to go ahead and scale it by choosing my scale tool, clicking the upper left-hand corner, and scaling that down to, let's say, something like that. I'm going to give it a little bit of a lighter fill, maybe a little lighter than that so we can see it, and drop that in there. I'm going to go up to my Edit menu and copy this, go up to my Edit menu again, and paste it. And I'm going to move it in here. All of a sudden we have a little pepperoni looking graphic that we can use. I want to select all three of these elements. So I can select one, I can hold my Shift key down and it will select the next, and I continue to hold my Shift key down and I can select the third one. I'm going to go up to my Edit menu and I'm going to say Copy, and I'm going to paste that in so we have two of these. I'm also going to go up to my Object menu and group these so that if I click off here and I click back on, they're all grouped together as one element. I'm going to go over here to my first pepperoni. I'm just going to make it look a little different by clicking and moving that around. I'm going to shift click these three elements. I'm going to go up to the Object menu and group those together also. I'm going to click on my zoom tool and I'm going to hold my Option key down or Alt on a PC, and I'm going to click once and I'm going to zoom out. I'll hold my space bar down to navigate within the window and move that in a comfortable position to be worked on. I'm going to choose my selection tool and drag this piece of pepperoni in here. Maybe I like this one down here. I'll click on this and throw that in there. All of a sudden we have something that looks like a delicious slice of pizza. Let's use our circle tool again. Let's go up and choose our circle tool, come out on the page. This time, let's draw our circle using the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC. We see our crosshairs for our circle. If we hold down our Option key, you'll see it change slightly. And we're going to click. I'm going to hold the Shift key down, our modifier key, to constrain it to a perfect circle, and I'm going to drag out from the center and let go. I'm going to fill it none, and I'm going to go ahead and stroke it. Let's use this pink color, and we'll make the stroke weight a little heavier. I'm going to get my scale tool. I'm going to click, and I'm going to scale it down. I'll go back and get my black selection tool, and I'll put it in place. Some other ways to copy and paste rather than going up to our menus and saying copy and paste every time, we can see the quick key shortcuts right here. If you look closely, with this object selected, when I hover over it and I hold down my Option or Alt, you see a little white arrow behind the black one. That tells me I'm going to duplicate the object. So Option or Alt on a PC, click and drag will duplicate it. I'm going to go up to my scale tool. I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to click. I'm going to hold my Shift key modifier key down, and I'm going to scale that down slightly. And we'll place that in there, maybe something like that. Let's go ahead and try that duplicate function again. I'm going to hold my Shift key down to select both objects, this circle and this circle. And I'm going to hover over it, hold my Option or Alt key on a PC down, click and drag and duplicate it. If I hold my Shift key down also, you'll see it constrain it as we did earlier. If I don't, I'll just drop it anywhere I choose. Another transformation we can make is using the Reflect tool. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's go get our pen tool, and we'll create this path here. Let's click and drag out. I'll come down here and click. One thing we didn't talk about earlier is if I have a handlebar here that extends past where I want. I want this to go straight across, and you'll see it'll start making a curve. I can go back and simply just click on that, and it's going to disappear. So that'll give me that sharp turn that I'm looking for. I'm going to hold my Shift key down to constrain and click. Once again, I'll hold my Shift key down to constrain and click, and I'll just come out here again with the Shift key and click. So what we have here, I'll hit return. What we have here is half of a mushroom graphic. Let's go ahead and stroke that none, and mushrooms are grayish in color, I guess. Let's do that. We'll fill it gray. I'm going to go ahead and get my black selection tool and make sure the entire object is selected. I'm going to go here and double click on my reflect tool. You'll see this palette show up. It gives me a few options on which way I want to reflect it. Let's go ahead and click this preview. So you see, with symmetrical objects, you only need to create half of it and flip it to complete the graphic. In my case, we're going to use this vertical. I want to copy it so we keep the existing graphic. And there we go. I'm going to click and shift and drag it over and use my Shift key to select the other side. I'm going to go up to my object menu and group it together. Let's go ahead and transform this and scale it to make it a little more sizable for our slice of pizza. I'll click and I'll drag it into place. A transform we haven't talked about yet is rotating. Let's go ahead and rotate this so it looks a little more natural. It's not so straight and rigid. So I'm going to get my rotate tool over here, and I'm just going to come out on the page and rotate it. We can give it an axis to rotate off of if we choose, like that. I'm going to go ahead and get my black arrow tool, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to hold that Option Alt key down again, and I'm going to duplicate it. Click and drag, duplicate. I'm going to get my rotate tool from the tool panel and rotate that around. Let's talk a little bit more about rotating objects. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit here. And I'm going to get my black arrow tool, and I'm going to draw a marquee around our graphic. I'm going to go to the object menu, and I'm going to group it. So as we click on it, the whole object moves at once. So using our rotate tool, we can place an axis anywhere we choose. By default, Illustrator is going to find the center and give us that mark. Say we wanted to rotate it out of here, we would just simply click, and that's where the object is going to rotate out of. I'm going to go ahead and Command Z or Control Z on a PC and undo that. In our case, we're going to repeat a transformation. I'm going to place my axis at this point. In our case, the transformation is a rotate. I'm going to go ahead and hold down my Option key or my Alt key on a PC. You'll see the little white arrow behind the black one show up. And out of our access point, I'm going to rotate this slice of pizza around. Using Command D or Control D on a PC will duplicate that function. Here we go. Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D. It's not super perfect, but let me go ahead and try that one more time. By undoing, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, and so on. Control Z on a PC. Let's try that again. We'll click on this access point. I'm going to hold my Option key down, Alt on a PC, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag it to the left. Control D or Command D on a Mac will duplicate that function. Pretty cool. Let me go ahead and zoom out so you can see that a little better. Let's go ahead and slide this slice right out since we're all grouped together. Using my space bar, I'll bring that into our page a little more. Another transformation we can make is skewing. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to go up here to my rectangle tool. I'm going to come out on the page, and I'm going to draw a rectangle like so. Let's go ahead and fill it maybe this blue color. And I'll get my black arrow tool. With it selected, I'm going to choose my skew tool. I'm going to come out onto the artboard and I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to move to the left. Okay, if I don't hold my modifier key down, in this case the shift key, it'll get a little wonky and want to move around on me. So with my shift key being held down, I'm going to move this to the left. Let's go ahead and mirror this. Move that out of the way so we could see. We're going to preview. We're going to copy it again so we'll have two, and we'll sort of make this graphic that points into each other. So I'll move that in there. I'll hold my shift key down to select two objects. I'll go to the object menu and group them together, and I'll sort of just center them here somewhere nicely. I'm going to go ahead and get my scale tool, and I'm going to click and I'm going to edit the scale of this. You can see if I don't hold down my shift key, I lose the constraint. In this case, I don't want. I'm going to make it a little higher and do something like that. I'll drop it down into place. With my black arrow tool, I'm going to click on this slice of pizza. I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, and I'll just maybe move that up in there. I'll do Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC, and I'll fit my graphic in the window. Working with typography, let's focus on how we can manipulate the type and format in a lot of different ways. First thing I'm going to do is go up to my type tool and select it, come out onto my artboard and click. Key in pizza. As I type in the word pizza, you'll see that my awesome control panel up here becomes active and knows that I'm working with a piece of text. I can click on it using my text tool like most software programs and click and highlight it by simply dragging across. I'm going to go ahead and increase this point size to 36 point. I'm going to center it. You also see that it gives me the option to show our paragraph panel or our character panel simply by clicking on it, which by default is not part of the panel system on the right hand side. I could also go up to the window menu and down to type and to character, and then I can place that panel anywhere I choose. I can go into the character menu and show options, which will give me a few more options that I want to see. Let's go ahead and choose a font. I'll just go with something like old school regular, and I'm going to get my black arrow tool and I'm going to drop this in place here in the middle. Now we could edit the text as we were doing all other graphic objects. We can fill it with color. In this case, let's go with, I don't know, can we get away with this light green? Yes. Now we can size this text as we did with our scale tool, simply by getting our scale tool, clicking, and dragging. Again, if we don't hold our modifier shift key down, it might get a little crazy on us. So that's how I'm doing that. We could also use our point size here, just by scaling it up point size. And I'll just simply click down. Using my black arrow tool, I can position it. We could also add a stroke to it. Bring our stroke to the front, and maybe we just want to stroke it yellow. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring this slice of pizza to the front again. Bring to front. What we haven't talked about yet is saving our project. Save early, save often. Let's go up to the File menu and down to Save. We'll place it here on the desktop. I'm going to give it a tag of EPS, a .EPS. And it's named My First Logo, which if you remember we named it when we started the document. And I'm going to hit Save. And everything's okay here, hit OK. Let's talk a little bit about type on a path. We all need to arc text, or maybe put it on a wave. In this case, we'll arc it over the top of our pizza pie. So I'm going to start with drawing a circle. We talked about earlier, setting the center point. I'm going to click, I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key, and then I'm going to drag out from the center and let go. I'm going to go over to my Text on a Path tool. You'll see this text tool with the little squiggly line. That means we're going to do text on a path. I'm going to come out to my selected path and click on it. I can now type in my text. Let's go with Adobe Illustrator. As you can see, it's way too big and it's not on the top where I'd like it. So let's go ahead and reduce that down a little bit by using our character palette and our point size. I'll just knock that down like that. So now we need to rotate it around. We can do it in a number of ways. The easiest way for me is to get our rotate tool from the tool palette, click, and simply drag it around. If we hold our shift key down again, our modifier key, it's going to want to constrain it. We could do the same thing for text on the bottom. Let's go ahead and perform that again. Let's get our circle tool, our ellipse tool. Oops. Going to cancel that. I'm going to come out on the page. I'm going to click in the center for my access point. I'm going to hold down my Option key on a Mac, Alt on a PC, and I'm going to click. I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to drag out and let go. Let's go get our Text on a Path tool again, and we'll click here on the bottom. Let's type in hot and fresh. If we go over to our black arrow tool, and you'll notice this I-beam sticking up here. We want to click on this and drag it around to the bottom. If we stay, this is takes a little bit of getting used to. As you can see, I'm struggling with it at the moment. And here we go. You just got to find where it wants to be and we can drop it into position. Let's go ahead and click on our pizza, go up to the object, arrange, bring to front, and maybe we'll just drop that out of the way over here for now. How's that? Well, that about does it for this session. Thanks for watching. You could see me teach these sessions at all 3 ASI shows, Orlando, Dallas, and Chicago. Now go out and create.